Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make the folded star hot pad. This time it's in the square version. If you've watched our YouTube channel before, you may have seen the video where I showed you how to make the round hot pads. These have been one of your favorite kits that we put together for you and very much enjoy tutorial. And when I saw the square ones, I'm like, we're going to do it again. It's a little bit different. So tune in. We're going to jump in. Let's talk about what's on the table. I'll move some things out of the way, and we'll be talking more about those products as we go. We found that when we make the folded star hot pads, whether that's in the square version or the circular version, starch your fabric. Starch them and give them a really good press. And you want to put a fresh blade in that rotary cutter. You want a nice clean cut, because this project is very dependent on you cutting your fabrics true and clean, because we're going to be doing an origami effect to create the pot holder. So good clean cuts. Let me put those blades aside. Sometimes I forget to do that when I get ready to do a project. I forget to put a fresh blade. I'm getting better about that. Because we will be dealing with glue. I recommend the super nonstick size 80-12. I just put a fresh needle into the machine before we got rolling with our cameras. So if you don't have any of the super nonstick, I love it, whether you're using glue on your projects, as you will be today, or maybe fusible interfacing, such as applique, laser cut applique. Super nonstick is fantastic. Let's put those aside for the moment. We will also be using our definitely glue. Now the Roxanne's glue base set has been around since before I even started quilting, and this is their newest shape. I love this kind of barrel. It's got two ends, this end and a bigger applicator. We'll be using this one. You could use the traditional bottle of Roxanne's glue based it. The amount that dispenses is a little bit even lighter, but I kind of like to get in there with a little bit more glue, so I'm using this one today. So be sure to pick up your favorite kind of Roxanne's glue based it, whether it's the smaller bottle or the bigger barrel as you're showing here. We'll need some coordinating thread. I'm going to start off with a monopoly clear. And how we'll be doing this, let me just jump ahead just a touch. Inside each of these, I don't know if the overhead camera can pick it up, probably it can't. There's clear thread that's going to secure this. Later we're going to come back with a coordinating thread. I have a beautiful Aurifil pink here. All of the information, by the way, will be in the links in the video, so you don't need to worry about writing any of these details down. We'll be using a coordinating thread there. And I came back with my green when I went ahead and stitched down my binding. So grab some coordinating thread and be sure to grab that monopoly as well. We're going to do just a little bit of a hand tacking of our binding. I'll be using the Richard Hemming, more about that later. And this is a Hold It Precision tool from Clover. You're going to see this is a very important tool as we begin to stitch down our folded layers. More on that to come. I'm going to put that here because I know that I will be using that. We'll touch just a little bit on our hot ruler as we roll into the step of doing the binding. So I'll put that aside for now. Scissors if you choose, but I will show you an option whether you want to cut your shape out or use a rotary cutter and a nice 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. I'll give you some options there. I have an applique pressing sheet out only because it's going to act as a barrier for me so that I don't get glue on top of this. It seemed to be a really great option, but you know, if you had wax paper, that'd work great too. It's just a tool that I happen to have and I grabbed that. So I'll be using that. And of course, this wouldn't be possible without PlumEasy's Folded Star Hot Pad pattern, which is a fantastic product. Deborah Miller is a very talented and skilled just maker that makes amazing professionally created patterns. And once you get this pattern, it will come with one template. You'll be able to make one of the Folded Star Hot Pad. Notice either in the square or circular version as you prefer. But then she's also conveniently created this 12-pack. It's the interfacing template refills. These work both with the square or with the round, and I love that. So we've already shown you on a previous version of how to do the circular ones, and today we're going to be doing the square ones, and it requires a little bit of a different size square in those corners. We'll be going over that. So let's jump in. So much to cover. I'm excited. I love these. And by the way, they just make it such a heartwarming, you know, if somebody moves into a new home, maybe a couple just got married, it's so nice to help them get started with a new home with handmade things that are going to be practical to use. You can throw these in the washing machine and use them again and again and again. So no need to baby those. They're beautiful to display and to use. So our first step, we're going to skip over the measurements. We want to protect, of course, Deborah's pattern, but you know, all those measurements are in there. So once you get that, you'll be able to dive into that. The first thing we're going to look at, and I'll try to keep my head out of the way and keep this forward of me, is that center square. So let's get this in front of our view so you're seeing what I'm going to be doing. We're going to start with this, and the first thing that we'll be doing is starting with that center square, and I just put a dab of glue in those four corners. Okay, now our next step will be putting in our folded fabrics. And you're like, well, how do I fold that? Great question. All of the layers are folded the same except for the four corners. Let me show you what the fold is, whether it's the smaller one, which is the first four that go here are one size. The next layers are one size and the corners are slightly different. There's two different folds you need to use. All of these will be folded this way. Let me move these out of the way. This again is one of those steps where you want a good hot iron and a really solid press, and this is where your cutting will matter, your precise cutting. And you can see now why I wanted to add that sizing is I want that fold to be perfect to be able to create this beautiful folded star. Now you can decide, do I want to fold these sides in like this, which is the side I would see, or do I want to fold that out like this? And that's kind of fun. I think this side is more interesting than like this, but that's going to be your choice. Okay, once you decide that, you folded this exactly in half. Just fold that directly down. And you can definitely give a good press. I'd rather you leave the iron on just a little bit longer and even steam it, but we want that point coming together as perfectly as we can. Okay, so that's the same for all of those. Now, what is this with this four corners? A little bit different. I'm going to go over that right now so we can prepare all of our shapes. So unlike the other one that was folded this way, this one is folded corner to corner. This is all in your pattern. These will come folded down here like this. And like that. So clever. Okay, so those are the four corners. Let's put that aside. Once we have all of our fabrics prepared, we'll just put a small dab of glue, and I'm going to fit that right inside this triangle. See these lines out here? Trying to not go past my visual center. So I'll just to speed up our process here, I'll just put glue on all of those. So I'm looking right down that line. You know, this is one of those things where if your kids like to craft with you, this would be a great thing for them to try to get everything lined up just so, and to be able to participate, which is always fun. Okay, don't worry about those flaps. They'll get all covered up shortly. Now, let's look at our design now. So the first layer, we had our center square and 4 squares. All of the other layers coming up, this and here, have 8. So now what we'll do is where this is going to go is notice these lines here. Notice how that says layer 2 right here? That's what we're on. The bottom of our square, excuse me, triangle, where I'm looking right now is right here. I look there initially. I look here to make sure I'm lined up, and now I want to make sure I'm parallel here and equidistant. So I've got 4 points I'm checking. Here, lined up, equidistant here. I want you to put a dab of glue here and on the right, but not on that left flap, because in the end, the very end, when we come around, we need to lift up that flap and tuck the last one under. So for that one, I'm going to leave that. That's a little bit generous with the glue, but let me spread that out just a little bit there. Got a little happy with my glue. Okay, now for my next one, it's going to, again, that's my arc 2, my 4 points, here, there, trying to run parallel with this line and this line. Now we will go ahead and put our glue on all 3 sides. Now if you want, you can continue to turn that so that's always north to you. I think it's easier to do that. That way, because I can now look straight down that line. And I'll turn it again. And I'll do one more. And then I'll quickly do that line, or that row I should call it. Now on this one right here, this is the one I want to show you. Coming around on the last one, we'll lift up that flap. We're going to position this. Now I can put a little bit of glue on that. There we go. And I'll lock that down. Okay, that's our second round. Third round, same story. Don't do this one for the very first. And we can see that this is layer 3 right here. Same check. Bottom, tracking, and I want to be running parallel to these lines out here. And we'll continue around again. Okay, row 4. This is when we have the 2 different sizes. those are my corners. These are my north, south, east, and west. So just like before, we'll start here. We'll do this whole one together. Leave that open, just like before, the left side, I shouldn't say open, unglued yet. Okay, with your corner, you have those two flaps. Those are going out here, so this side going in has the nice fold. I'm just going to put plenty of glue on this one. I don't think you could probably glue that too much. Now I'm really looking for that to be tracking right up there. Worry less about it sitting in that exact corner than just tracking right up that line. There we go. Okay, next one. I have a corner again. There's our flaps. They'll be in the corner. So just like before, we're going to lift up that flap. And let's glue that down. By the way, this collection is called Anastasia. Oh my goodness, so many of you signed up for the coming soon notification. That may be new to you. So if you're like, what are you talking about? If you go to the Shabby Fabrics website, on the kind of that top navigation where you can say fabrics, kits, I think patterns, there's a coming soon collection. Click on that. You're seeing all of the collections that are coming soon, and you can click to be notified. That way, when new fabrics come in, you get notified about it before we even send out the email. And we have had collections even sell out before we've been able to email, so it's great to be notified about coming soon. But we had more people sign up for coming soon on this collection than maybe we've ever had in the history of Shabby Fabrics. So many of you love this shabby chic look, and as you know, it's harder to find this type of fabric. Okay, once everything is down, I like to go ahead and actually let it dry historically, kind of walk away, maybe work on a piecing project, but we're going to keep going because we want to get this project going. Give it a good press. The flatter everything is, and my iron had shut off during that, so I'm going to let that heat up real quick, but I'm going to talk you through what the next step is. We're going to absolutely press this down so that it's as flat as it can possibly be. This is when you'll want to go ahead and put the monopoly clear thread, whatever brand you want to use, in your machine. Now I notice I've got this on the vertical spool pin, and I think I'm going to actually flip that around. I don't know if it actually makes a difference. It just seems like because it's wound onto my spool in that direction, I reduce the twisting by having it here and not on my horizontal spool pin. So figure out what works for you. I have not adjusted my tension. I've got a 50 weight cotton thread in my bobbin, so I definitely only recommend a monopoly in the top of your machine. And I've got the precision tool. You'll see me use that shortly. But let's give a good press. I want to dive right into this and show you. This is a great half-day project. You can definitely do this in a couple of hours. Look how already, just giving it a good press, look how far down this track I am. Now we'll go ahead and take this off here. I love the fact that this applique pressing sheet doesn't seem to matter how much I beat this up. This is a Fons & Porter one, by the way, which I've had for years. Once that glue dries, I just with my fingernail kind of get it up and it's gone. You could wipe that down. You almost can't destroy these things. They're so amazing. And I'm going to put that aside since we won't be using that again, and I'll dry that. In fact, I'll put it back here to dry, and I'll go ahead and get that glue off a little bit later. That's why maybe using like a wax paper that you can just discard is a great option so that you don't have to kind of pick off the glue. All right, we're going to head over to our machine. Okay, so what we're going to be doing next is I'm going to start off by lifting this flap. With our needle down, we're going to track right alongside this flap, going all through these layers. So very slowly with the monopoly. I find if I get too fast, it can tend to break. So our goal will be to continue across this track. Now, as we get to here, the presser foot's going to want to lift that. That's where this tool is going to come into play and hold those layers down and help control that, so that nothing rolls back on me. All right, let's get started. No need to back stitch. Go ahead and start right onto the template. As you can see, the goal is to split that valley right there. Here, I might even roll that back just a touch. There we go. Now I can let one of those flaps down so I kind of have a ridge to sew next to versus like, where am I? Okay, so all of those are done. You only have to do the 1, 2, 3, and 4 since you're going all the way across. Okay, for our next step, what we'll do is any of those flaps that are kind of, well, literally kind of flapping, we're just going to go ahead and secure those with a little bit of glue. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be just a little dab there. And you're going to be changing your thread now. We're done with our monopoly. The next thread color that you can put in, I'll put in my pink because it's going to be my next color coming up. Let's get those glued down. Okay, I think everything is down. And I would recommend just trimming off all that monopoly. That can definitely mess with your machine. You don't want a whole lot of that. That could potentially get drawn up into the machine and create any kind of problems or damage. Okay, now on the back side of the project, I'm going to go ahead and change my thread. What we'll be doing is we're going to sew just on the inside of that drawn line, just sewing straight with a regular stitch length. And again, I just chose the pink. It doesn't matter, the color's insignificant. What we're trying to do is just secure that whole edge around all four sides, again sewing on the inside of that line. So now what we'll do, and this is where you have a choice of using scissors, or because it's a straight line, I like to use all the technology I can, a nice straight ruler and a nice sharp rotary cutter to cut that clean line. With the round one, we don't have the option. That's where the scissors have come in. So if you're comfortable with the rotary cutter and you're comfortable with your straight edge, which I definitely am, I'm a quilter, I'm going to put that down there. First off, let's double check something. Let's make sure none of those flaps flipped back. We glued them down, so they shouldn't have, but this would be the time to check. If it did, seam rip it, get that flap down with a touch of glue and go sew again. Everything looks good to me though. I want to go ahead now and trim that up. I think I could have done a better cut right there on that. Okay, let's do that again. Now that I have a 90-degree corner, just to help me square up for sure. And the last side. Okay. Probably clean off my own clothes here. Let's see how we're doing. Our hot pad is coming into shape very quickly. Our next step will be to grab a piece of batting, and don't we all have batting left over from projects? If you do your own quilting, you certainly have that. This is just a piece of Heat and Bond Light, and I have a backing fabric here. Right side down, wrong side up. We'll put our batting here. You know, if you want to use a basting spray, you could. You could obviously use something like a double-sided fusible fleece if you want to use that. I don't have either of those with me, so you could certainly put some pins in here. In fact, I might even have my clover pins, which I will put that in there. And I will put that, well, even that is bulky right there. Just so this thing does not move while I'm doing just a little bit of quilting. Now, obviously, you can do as much quilting as you want. Here's what I did on mine. I just came in trying to keep the same distance from this beautiful edge here, and that's where that beautiful pink Aurifil thread came in, and that's all that I did here. So, but you can do, of course, anything that you want, and if you're going to be using the basting spray, you don't need to be pinning like this. But if not, and sometimes I use it and sometimes I don't. In the middle of winter where it's very cold here and I don't go outside very much, I don't like to use the basting spray indoors because it can be a little bit fumey. Where we're going to start, I'll just start. I don't like to start on a point. I like to start a beam one of the sides, and I'm just going to set my distance and try to maintain that all the way down. If you have a machine that has a needle down feature, you definitely want to engage that now because you'll be pivoting that around that needle at each one of your points. So I'm going to just use my presser foot really as my guide. The furthest right edge of that, I'm going to keep tracking right along here. That way I know that I'm the same distance. And I'm not going to back stitch initially because when I come back around, I will stitch over where I started. I'm going to stop in that valley right there. That's your stopping point. Now take note of this little notch in your foot, or whatever that sight picture looks like, that's what you want to continue doing throughout your project. Once I get past this fold, I count 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. That seems to be, for me, the perfect distance. Stop in the valley. Let's pivot. We're crossing our line right there. 1, 3. Let's look. I'm going to go maybe one more. That was probably a little bit shy. There we go. I feel better about that. Okay. So that's the only quilting I'm going to do on this project. And aren't these so fun? Oh, they're so fun. When I made one, I'm like, I can't wait to make another one, because it's fun to see the color combinations. How do you arrange your fabrics? I love, it's a great project to do with scrap fabric that you're like, what do I do with this? This is a great project to do with this. Okay, we're going to trim again. So I'll just lay my ruler back where I was, and now my edge that I cut before is my guide. We'll cut our batting and backing. Trying to make sure I stay nice and square. Okay, so now we are ready for binding. So 1 binding strip is all you need. 1 2 1/4 inch strip is what they've mentioned in here. Now if you're going to hand tack to the back, 2 1/4 is plenty. Even if you're going to do a machine stitching, probably 2 1/4 is enough to wrap to the back and then stitch in the ditch and catch the back. This is 2 1/2. So if you have any concern about catching that back, because I've definitely missed that, where I've sewn the binding on, wrapped it to the back, clipped it, and then sewn from the front and missed it. If that's going to be you, go ahead and cut your strips to 2 1/2 inches, and I've done that here just so that you could see that if that's the option that you take. But again, if you feel comfortable with 2 1/4, that works as well. Let's put that aside. 1 strip is all it takes, and right away in our pattern, it asks us to turn that edge under by 1/4 inch. Now, oh, and of course my iron cooled down on me again while I was sewing. If you want to have that dead on 1/4 inch, this is where the hot ruler comes into play. Anytime you want to fold, let me put that back there to warm up. Anytime you want an exact measurement instead of an approximation, just grab your hot ruler. We use it for so many projects where you need to measure that exact distance. Maybe the straps of a tote bag is the classic example. I use this all the time. I found that when I did my binding on this one, I went more than 1/4. I want more than that 1/4, and you'll see why. It just provided me just a little bit more confidence that as I came around the 4 sides and I tucked the tail in, that 1/4 inch isn't a lot. So I am going to recommend maybe 3/8 to even 1/2 inch. But the point being, if you want to be very precise, we can use our hot ruler. Let's go ahead and maybe we'll split the difference and do a 3/8 inch. And we can just start off with getting a nice clean edge. I think we've already got that. Let's just check and see how yeah, we can just start that again. We have plenty. We'll just cut that at a 45. And now you'll just lay that ruler down and get whatever measurement is that you're going for. I'm going to go a little bit healthier than that. I like this to be secured. And you can steam that. You cannot destroy these rulers. Of course, most of our rulers are acrylic. You could never do this. That's why Clover created this product, is they truly recognized there was a need, and they met that need. So as that little point right there, go ahead and trim that away. And you'll just fold your binding strip in half. Wrong sides together and give a good press like you would with any binding that you're going to be doing. All right. I like to start binding never in a corner. Never start it in a corner. It makes it so difficult. What we're going to do is we're going to begin our binding going all the way around that, and that last side is going to tuck into this little flap. That's why I wanted just a little bit more here versus a 1/4 of an inch, which isn't much. I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to, I feel confident about just kind of, you could put the Wonder Clips, you could put the pin, but we can cleanly see that edge. I'm going to go ahead and go without that at this point. One thing that I am going to do, and it does really help, actually I will put this in just to kind of control the amount of things I'm having to hang on to right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to secure, notice I'm pulling this back. I can't stitch that down yet, not yet. This has to come around and tuck into that. So I'm going to leave this open, and to start off with, I'm just going to secure this down. Go ahead and change, in fact I need to change my thread to green, because once I stitch that down and I'm going to secure that by machine to the back, I'm going to want to have green. Now it's your decision. This is always a point of debate. So if you knew that this was what you're going to be putting your binding on, do you put the pink on the top so that you're going to have pink up here and then green on the back? And I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I definitely need the green on the back, but my miss is going to be probably on my pink. So if I had green up here, you might see it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my beautiful pink here, but I'm going to go ahead and load my bobbin with my kind of forest green, and we're going to begin sewing our binding on with a regular 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm also going to change my foot to have that 57D, or maybe whatever presser foot you're using with, because it's got that nice gait. It's got a nice ridge for me to track along, and I'll definitely be wanting that assistance. So I'll go ahead and change out my presser foot and change out my bobbin thread. So I've got myself ready to go. Let's just secure that right there. And for a little bit of a distance, okay, I'm going to cut my thread, and now I'm going to go ahead, probably start about right here. It just, later on when I come back around, you'll see how that's going to help me out by having that secured. I've got enough going on and without more loose fabric. Now, as normal, you're going to come down and stop a 1/4 of an inch away, and I'm going to cut my thread there. If you need to mark that, you know, this is another great use of that hot ruler, where you can just put that up there and mark that, or any ruler, and just mark a 1/4 of an inch, or you just know you're there. Now, if you're using that same foot right there, that notch tells me I'm a 1/4 of an inch away. So I'm looking at that notch right now to give me a clue Now get ready to back up. Okay, and I'm going to cut that. How we do binding, I want you to see that from that side camera, is I pivot that at a 45-degree angle, and now pivot it back on top of itself, just like that. If you want to put a clip or two in there, go ahead and do that. And now we'll start. Now, some people will start sewing right off the edge here, and some people come in a quarter. I have found success with both. Today, what the heck, why don't I come in just a quarter here, my visual quarter that I guesstimate. Definitely backstitch, secure that. Okay, on this side here, you're going to sew probably about right into here, and then we're going to stop, and we're going to trim this, and I'm going to show you how to tuck that in. And we can stay on the side camera here because I want you to see this. So we already know that this little envelope, so to speak, can take that much fabric. And you know, I think you should go there. I think you should tuck in as much of that tail as you can. So we don't, because we're going to use this, we don't want this to come apart. And it just kind of fits right inside there. Just kind of tucks inside that flap. Just like that. Just like that. And you want to smooth that down so there's absolutely no bubble here. And we'll go back and we'll stitch that down. Kind of that bubble I talked about right there. Okay. So let's look at something real quick. Again, the close-up camera, just so that you see what's going on. We know that this is tucked in and it's a nice long tail. You don't want to go short or it can easily back out. That's why I made a nice long tail. Still, what she mentions inside her pattern is with needle and thread, we go ahead and I will do it from this side because this side's going to wrap around to the back just like that and get secured. So why not make our knot on the back? We only need to do this on the front side. I'm just going to come in, and I should have started actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I started here or here, because I'm going to be able to hide my stitches on the back side. My goal is to just close that gap. So there's no chance that that tail can come out. I'm going to turn it a little bit more natural for me to sew there. I know that's hard for you to see with my fingers in the way, but I'm doing whatever stitch I prefer, a ladder stitch, anything that I'm absolutely going all the way to the back in securing that edge. So I'll do that. I'll just keep coming back up and going back down, coming up on this side, going down over on that side, all the way to the back. I'll keep doing that all the way to here, and then just tie off back here again, because we're going to roll this binding to the very back, which is our next step. Okay, so I secured that, and by the way, I just used the Richard Hemming needles. They're size 4, there's 12 needles, they're just a couple dollars. I think I've used the same pack at home for like 10 years. They last forever. Okay, so we've got the binding sewn on, and now this is where the Wonder Clips. You could use the regular size, the minis are great, whatever size you like. Go ahead and flip that to the back, and we're going to be sewing it from the front. So I always recommend you keep that in mind, because that Wonder Clip is flat there and it has the nice arc here. You want the side that's going to have contact with your sewing machine to be on that side. So let's go ahead and put that flat side there. When you come to the corner, you already know this if you're a quilter, but if you're not a quilter, you're going to come here, roll that back so you have a nice little miter, and you're going down the other direction. And I recommend you putting a clip in that corner to kind of hold that down. Because those can have a mind of their own for sure. All right, so we'll Wonder Clip everything, trimming our threads as we go. Let's just Wonder Clip everything down, and we are ready to do some stitching in the ditch. I want to do that with you. That may be completely new to you, so that you will be able to grab a kit or grab this pattern and the refills and grab your own fabric and be able to make these, and you're going to just love how fun and easy these are to make. But I don't want to leave out any step that you might find challenging. So if you already know how to bind this, hey, you're already done with this video, and I appreciate you watching. But I never know, if you're brand new, maybe you grabbed that sewing machine out because you were sewing masks for the pandemic. By the way, thank you for doing that. And maybe you've never done binding. That's why I don't want to skip any steps. Okay, or how to stitch in the ditch. All right, what other side? We do one more side. Okay, stitching in the ditch. How does this business work? Well, it's just like you would expect. This is the ditch, and we're going to just try to pull that fabric aside, anchoring our thread, our top thread here. Of course, our bobbin is green, catching that in the back. So let's go ahead and get started along a side. I don't like to start in a corner because I want to leave that clip on for that miter in the corner. And I can see, ideally, I would change my presser foot. This little gate here is not helping me. In fact, it's a little bit in my way, but I'm just going to continue. But just be mindful of your presser foot so it's serving you well. Wow, we have a hot pad. How beautiful is this? And how fun is that? So super fun. So if you love to be able to make handmade gifts, or you want to have just something special in your kitchen month over month, definitely consider making the folded star hot pads in either the square or the circle as I showed you before. And of course the refills work for both. So if you know a friend that would love to make these, tag them, let them know about the video. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube, and I'll see you in a future Shabby video.